everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the HWN Report, the official video podcast of the Hurricane WatchNet. I'm Bobby Graves, KB5HAV, and I'm so glad that you've joined us. Whether you're a ham radio operator, a weather enthusiast, or just curious about the incredible role amateur radio has played during times of hurricanes, you're in the right place. For nearly 6 decades, the Hurricane WatchNet stood watch during some of the most powerful storms in history. But to understand where we are today, we need to look back at where it all began. Back in 1965, our founder, Jerry Murphy, answered a call for help from the Bahamas during Hurricane Betsy. With no 24-hour news and weather, no instant weather apps, and no internet as we know it today, amateur radio became a lifeline. And from that moment forward, the Hurricane WatchNet was born. In this episode, we'll take a look back at the history of both communications and the net itself. And you'll hear from Jerry Murphy in his own words, from tracking Hurricane Hugo to sharing the power of amateur radio on local television. This is a story of how one ham's passion grew into a network of volunteers dedicated to saving lives and serving communities. This is the HWN Report, and it starts right now. Welcome to the HWN Report, the stories, people, and history behind the Hurricane WatchNet. This first episode looks back at how it all began and the legacy we carry today. In future episodes, we'll mix things up with interviews with special guests, DIY hurricane tips, and more. The story of the Hurricane WatchNet begins not in a high-tech command center or government lab, but on a simple radio frequency. Amateur radio operators, often called hams, have long had a passion for experimentation, communication, and public service. During the first week in September of 1965, that passion would take on a life of its own. Hurricane Betsy, a powerful storm moving through the Bahamas, created an urgent and need for accurate and timely information. And there's a reality check. Back then, there was no 24/7 news and weather coverage on TV like we have today. Certainly no Doppler radar, and no geostationary satellites. In fact, the first geostationary satellite for the Atlantic wasn't launched until late in 1975. Basically, by today's standards, weather forecasting was still in its infancy. Communities often had to rely on word of mouth, local radio, or the reports of dedicated volunteers. Getting accurate information about a hurricane's path, intensity, or timing was a matter of life and death. And in many cases, that information simply just didn't exist. On Labor Day weekend of 1965, a young Jerry Murphy, K8YUW, just 28 years old, was stationed in the United States Naval Mobile Construction Battalion, also known as the Navy Seabees, in Rhode Island. In his spare time, Jerry handled countless messages for deployed military personnel over the Intercontinental Amateur Radio Traffic Net, which back in those days operated on 14.320 megahertz. When Betsy moved through the Bahamas, the flow of critical weather information between South Florida and the islands began to overwhelm net operations. Jerry, along with a friend of his on that net, Marcy Rice, KZ5MM, who was located in the Panama Canal Zone, realized something had to change. So Jerry suggested moving the storm traffic up 5 kilohertz to clear the net. That small adjustment led to the creation of the first Hurricane WatchNet on 14.325 megahertz, where hams read National Hurricane Center bulletins and forwarded surface reports to Miami and eventually got directly into the forecasters at the National Hurricane Center. This wasn't just a clever workaround. It was groundbreaking. Ordinary citizens armed with radios and knowledge were providing real-time, life-saving data to professional meteorologists at a time when modern technology yet couldn't do the job. Betsy went on to strike the northern Bahamas and the Florida Keys as a Category 3 hurricane, and then it made final landfall at Grand Isle, Louisiana as a Category 4 hurricane. It became the first U.S. hurricane to cause more than $1 billion in damages, earning it the nickname Billion Dollar Betsy. Jerry managed the net until 1988, continued as assistant net manager until 1991, and even after retiring remained deeply involved. He often logged into the Hurricane Watch Net's private chat room during storm activations, cheering on operators, sharing advice, and marveling at how small effort on Labor Day weekend in 1965 had grown into a large network of dedicated volunteers. In a 2019 reflection, Jerry wrote, "Once again, as it happens each and every year, I continue to be amazed, pleased, and gratified that the minor inconvenience I experienced on Labor Day weekend of 1965 would lead to such a marvelous and engaging enterprise as the Hurricane WatchNet." He emphasized that the guiding principle was PICON, P-I-C-O-N, which stands for Public Interest, Convenience, and Necessity, the same standard the FCC uses for broadcast licensing. For hams, PICON isn't just legal language. It's a way of life, helping the public when a disaster strikes, sharing knowledge, and advancing the art of radio. In 1980, Dr. Neil Frank, director of the National Hurricane Center at the time, requested an amateur radio station be set up for Hurricane Allen. A young Julio Ripoll, WD4JNR at the time, who now holds the call sign WD4R, volunteered to set up a temporary station. During this event, amateur radio proved its worth. Reports could be received by the forecasters much quicker than before. Afterward, Dr. Frank suggested there be a permanent ham station on the grounds of the National Hurricane Center. That station became a reality and started off using the call sign W4EHW. Then in 2004, that call sign was updated and changed to WX4NHC, a call sign they use till today. And that station remains in operation as a vital communications hub during every hurricane event. Over the years, the Hurricane WatchNet has seen firsthand just how powerful these communications can be. Hurricanes are among the deadliest of forces in nature, often stretching hundreds of miles and leaving destruction in their wake. From Tropical Storm Allison in 2001, which dumped over 40 inches of rain on Houston, to Hurricane Mitch in 1998, a hurricane that stalled over Honduras, resulting in a catastrophic humanitarian disaster. More than 11,000 people were confirmed dead. Let me repeat that one. More than 11,000 people were confirmed dead, with some estimates exceeding 18,000, and thousands more perished in Nicaragua, Guatemala, and El Salvador. Former Hurricane WatchNet net manager Brad Pivison, W9FX, recalled, "The damage was, by all accounts, unfathomable to those who were not there to see it. During the height of the storm, we had one ham in Belize who didn't get out of his home in time to beat the flooding. He sat on his roof, under his antenna, with a car battery to power his rig, describing the flow of dirty water running window high down the street, the water peppered with corpses of cows, goats, sheep, and neighbors, sadly including their children. The flight following, as we called it, started before I came on frequency after the storm passed. Bob Bodick, K5SIV, was chief among those helping keep track of the bush pilots, the guys flying loads of food, water, fuel, and medicine into these ravaged towns and villages. We would track the flights live from takeoff until landing at their destinations. We were their lifelines, as no aviation communications facilities were left standing in Central America. The pilots handled the tedious flights well, of course. It's when they saw the throngs of starving, thirsty people waiting to storm their aircraft. When they landed, they gave them pause. Even with modern forecasting tools, the need for ground truth reporting remains critical. You see, radar beams can overshoot surface conditions. Satellites provide a broad view but cannot detect floodwaters inside homes or measure high winds tearing through neighborhoods. And models, they rely on real-world observations to remain accurate. So we need your surface reports. Despite today's high-tech advancements, we still need reporting stations that provide real-time, ground truth weather data and damage reports. The reports we receive are forwarded directly to the forecasters at the National Hurricane Center Miami via WX4 NHC. These reports are hand-carried to the forecaster. They normally read these reports immediately. They're not set aside for later. You see, they're valued pieces of information. They help fill in a piece of the puzzle, give them a real idea of what's going on there at the surface. Paints a picture, if you will. Some reports have caused updates to forecast tracks, kept hurricane warnings active when they were about to be downgraded, and more. A clear example of the continuing importance of amateur radio occurred in 2016 during Hurricane Matthew, at one time a Category 5 storm. As the Hurricane WatchNet prepared to activate, I contacted the Haitian hams that I knew by email to notify them of such. Within minutes, one of the stations called me via international long distance. You could hear the thankful emotion in his voice. "Thank you for loving on us," he said. "We never knew there was a storm, much less a major hurricane. Thanks to you, we have activated our nationwide emergency network." You know, it's sobering that entire populations can be cut off from life-saving information. Yet amateur radio fills that gap, providing real-time updates that can literally save lives. Around 2004, the Hurricane WatchNet began exploring ways to expand beyond 14.325 megahertz. We considered other HF bands like 40 meters and the use of Echolink to tie into local VHF and UHF repeater systems to collect real-time ground truth weather data. You see, not all licensed hams have voice privileges on the HF frequencies, or perhaps don't have any HF radio equipment. And Echolink seemed promising. But we soon discovered another group had already created the VoIP Hurricane Net early that same year, 2004. And we have a great working relationship with them to this day. That you see, they collect weather reports directly from stations on the ground and also glean data from social media and other sources. For the Hurricane WatchNet, there was no need to reinvent the wheel. Years later, in 2021, the Hurricane WatchNet began working closely with the Salvation Army Team Emergency Radio Network, or SATERN for short. Among other things, they are highly experienced in handling outgoing health and welfare traffic from disaster zones and helping families reconnect after storms or other major events. Even with incredible technology advantages, satellites, drones, buoys, radar, and numerical models, you see, ground truth information is irreplaceable. When hurricanes make landfall, especially major hurricanes, power grids fail, cell towers will go down, and internet access sadly disappears. Battery-powered, portable, independent of commercial infrastructure, ham operators can transmit real-time observations when all else fails. Their reports are often the only lifeline for emergency managers, forecasters, and the public. Hurricane WatchNet operators continue this tradition of service today, providing critical communications for communities in danger, just as Jerry envisioned over 60 years ago. From Betsy to Mitch, Matthew, and beyond, the principle remains the same. Ordinary people armed with knowledge and a radio, making a difference in extraordinary circumstances. Today, nearly 60 volunteers across the United States, Canada, Bermuda, Honduras, Nicaragua, Puerto Rico, and Aruba relay real-time weather data and storm damage reports directly to the National Hurricane Center's amateur radio station, WX4 NHC. Since its founding, the net has supported 156 landfalling hurricanes, including 60 major hurricanes and 12 Category 5 storms. The net's longest continuous activation occurred during Hurricane Matthew back in 2016, when operators remained on the air continuously for 151 straight hours. That's just barely over 6 full days. We were tired afterwards, but we do it because it's our passion. We want to do our best to help save lives and keep people informed. Today, the net operates on 14.325 megahertz as well as 7.268 megahertz, often simultaneously, with net control stations strategically positioned throughout the region to maximize coverage. Technology has evolved dramatically since 1965. Forecasters once relied on rudimentary tools and ham ingenuity. The first Atlantic Basin Ghost weather satellite would not be launched until 1975. And the hurricane hunters had just begun flying the C-130 aircraft into storms like Betsy. Today we have the satellites, drones, buoys, radar, and global communications networks. Yet the Hurricane Watch Net remains critical. Our mission has remained constant, disseminating hurricane advisories from the National Hurricane Center, relaying ground-level reports, and providing backup communications for emergency agencies and relief operations. Today, all 4 teams, the Hurricane Watch Net, WX4NHC, the VOIP Hurricane Net, and SATERN, we all work hand in hand toward a common goal, collecting forward weather data and damage reports and send those to the forecasters at the National Hurricane Center in Miami, and more importantly, to help save lives. In recent years, we've been dubbed hurricane hams, but that's a story for another episode. In short, the Hurricane Watch Net is more than a radio network. It's a living testament to the spirit of amateur radio, curiosity, innovation, and above all, service. It all began with one man, one hurricane, and a simple idea: use radios to keep people safe. Jerry Murphy, K8YUW. He may have passed away earlier this year in February, but his vision is alive every time the net activates. Every report, every message, every life-saving communication is a reminder of his legacy and the power of ordinary people coming together to serve the public in times of crisis. To really understand the heart of the Hurricane Watch Net, there's no better place to start than with our founder, Jerry Murphy. His love for amateur radio and his dedication to helping others set the tone for everything we do today. About 10 years ago, Jerry sent me something very special, an old VHS tape. Sounds odd, but inside were 3 video clips from 1989. During Hurricane Hugo. For me, it felt like I was opening a time capsule, a glimpse back into our roots and into Jerry's passion for what we do. And as far as I know, these are the only video clips in existence of Jerry talking about the Hurricane Watch Net and how he became a ham and more. That makes it not only rare, but deeply meaningful for all of us who carry on his vision. The first clip was filmed right in Jerry's home by his good friend, David Chatham, N8BZC. In it, you'll see Jerry talking about Hurricane Hugo as it was tearing through the northern Leeward Islands and heading toward the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. So let's sit back and take a look.
When we talked yesterday, Hugo had just been named a major hurricane. At that time, it was packing 120-mile-an-hour winds and was some 550 miles east of the Lesser Antilles. There have been some major changes. Today, the storm is 240 miles southeast of Guadalupe. The winds are still up there at that same speed. They call it 130 knots to 150 knots, or in the public version, they call it an extremely dangerous hurricane. This being Saturday morning, we're finding a lot of folks are at home and available to talk to us. We did not have that luxury earlier in the week. Earlier in the week, when Hugo was still getting warmed up, we were able to talk to some of the islands. This being Saturday, so many others are available for us. Last night I talked with Peter down in Montserrat, VP2 MAP. Today he's not up. but we do have several other stations in that area. VP2 EHF on Anguilla, for instance. We have stations on Antigua. We have other stations all up and down the chain, from Puerto Rico through the Virgin Islands, all the way down through Grenada, all the Grenadines, Barbados, the northern coast of Venezuela. But many stations are all online with us this morning. They've all been passing the advisories around to one another. As I mentioned, the storm is still 240 miles east-southeast of Guadalupe, well offshore, but closing on the central part, and it's beginning to look like it's going to go right over the top of Guadalupe, very close to Montserrat. If you wanted to shoot a picture of that, I've got it outlined here on the map, and I can show you what we've done. I don't know if you're able to see this, but at 1000 Zulu, the storm is located in this position. Here are several lesser Antilles. Around it, I have drawn an arc that represents the outermost gale force winds, as given in this advisory. The next spot over is the 12-hour advisory, which would be valid at 1800 Zulu tonight. Around it, I've got a small circle representing the hurricane force winds and a larger circle representing the gale force winds. That tells us by tonight we're going to have the northernmost, at least, Lesser Antilles, well involved with gale force winds. That's why I've got so many of these stations online with us. We've got very good conditions today, by the way, and we're able to communicate with almost everybody up and down the chain. They, in turn, are able to communicate with one another on other frequencies. And to our knowledge, everybody up and down this chain is prepared for those gale force winds that they should start getting in a few hours and have in hand by late tonight. Elsewhere, I've plotted on this map up to, let's see, it'll be 12, 24, 36 hours from now. It'll be somewhere just off the shores of the U.S. Virgin Islands. If it stays on this course, and that far in the distance it may not. It may turn north of that, it may go south of that. I'm betting it may go a little bit further north than that. But if that's the case, within 36 hours we will have had very severe weather in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And as far as I know, they are prepared for that. They've already got their emergency operations centers set up, and the storm is still a day and a half away. We've talked with the folks up on Villegas. We've talked to the folks all over Puerto Rico this morning. Boats are already putting into safe harbor in Puerto Rico, and looks like they're going to be well prepared. We're getting good reports from them. However, at this moment, there's not that much in the way of severe weather to report back to the Hurricane Center. We just had a report from the VP2 on Antigua, and he's just showing, well, I've written it down here, light rain and light cumulus, nothing exciting to report. That will deteriorate throughout the day, and as he does, and as he collects these other reports from his nearby islands, we'll feed those direct into the Hurricane Center in near real time. I don't know of any other way that they can get the word from the Hurricane Center to these islands as soon as we can get that word to them, or that they can get their reports back into the Hurricane Center in Miami. We've got excellent conditions. I don't know if you'll be able to hear this tape recording I made a little while ago. This one particular fellow was on from Antigua, just reporting in. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, the Anguilla Emergency Operations Center. It's online. We're ready. I don't know what the storm is going to bring, but we're ready as we can be.
As Hugo pounded the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, Jerry told a Cleveland television audience how ham radio became a lifeline, relaying critical messages from the storm zone. Let's take a listen.
Bob Sheese at the National Hurricane Center says that damage in Puerto Rico has been severe, with up to 15 inches of rain forecasted. Flooding and mudslides are expected over the next several days. Overall, the death toll from the storm stands at 9 this afternoon. Now, as you can imagine, communication into and out of Puerto Rico has been very difficult, so many are relying upon ham radio operators in the United States for reports from the Caribbean. We're being joined now by Jerry, who operates his own ham radio from a suburb west of the city. He has asked us not to use his last name, by the way, because of all the equipment he has there. Jerry, first of all, thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
Have you heard any reports coming out of the region?
I've heard lots of things for the last 2 or 3 days, Wilma. It's incredibly bad in many, many places.
I'd say it has been. Give us some of the stories you've heard to describe this for us.
Well, there was a boat captain that had his own private boat, about a 45-footer in Vieques, one of the islands just east of Puerto Rico, described for us the eye of the storm as it went overhead. He had an incredible ride on his boat. All of a sudden it became calm. He ran outside, took all the palm fronds off of his boat, tied up his lines again, helped some other people tie up their boats, and then they all ran back down below decks and rowed it out again. It's incredible. Some of the damage reports we've heard, 70% of some of the housing on some of the islands, 80% of the housing on other islands like Culebra. They lost 80% of their homes. On the St. Croix and the Virgin Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, reported 50 to 75% of the roofs off the homes. The streets are impassable due to trees, power lines, wires, cables, billboards, whatever. It's impossible to get around. There's no communications, no refrigeration for their food.
Oh, my. You know, you've been doing this for a long time with ham radios. Have you heard and gone through situations of this caliber before?
Yeah, I was in several of them. I've been in 22 different typhoons or hurricanes, including Camille. I was in that one.
How does this one compare?
This one is only a Category 4. I was in Camille, which was a Category 5, a much worse storm. Unfortunately, this particular one hit so many places that were very low in elevation. People lived right along the beaches. They're unprepared for storms like this because there hasn't been any in a very long time in many places, generations in some cases. In the hilly areas, the incredible amount of rain that came along caused mudslides, landslides, flooding. It's just unbelievable, some of the things we've been hearing over.
Well, Jerry, we thank you for joining us and giving us your insights into this.
We've got to stop meeting like this.
With situations this desperate, I know. Thank you.
Later that same week, that same TV station honored Jerry as their Man of the Week. In this segment, you'll hear him reflect on his journey into amateur radio and the impact it had on his life and the lives of so many others.
And just ahead, we're going to meet a man who is not afraid to call himself a ham.
He's our Person of the Week, and his story is coming up next on Eyewitness News.
People in Akron and all across northern Ohio have had their thoughts on the victims of Hurricane Hugo this past week. But a Lakewood man has been actively working to help hurricane trackers prevent further casualties from occurring during the midst of this powerful storm. He says he just wants to be known as Jerry, and he is our Person of the Week. Jerry is in charge of the Hurricane Watch Network in Cleveland. He is an important link between the National Weather Service and emergency workers in disaster areas.
Our group, the Hurricane Watch Net, communicates on behalf of the National Hurricane Center in Miami. They can provide a better forecast if they've got more input from places. Unfortunately, the satellites can't get down on the ground and measure barometers, for instance. We have people in those places with barometers that will tell us what their barometer is. We can communicate that direct into the Hurricane Center. Then going on the other way, the Hurricane Center lets us know what are the advisories, where is the storm, what is it going to go, and we can tell the people in those areas much sooner than any other media, anywhere.
Jerry, a member of the American Meteorological Society, got interested in ham radio operations while serving in the Navy in the 1960s, after his wife gave birth to their first child.
Many years ago, I was stationed on Midway Island in the Navy, and I got a phone call I was quite unprepared for. It was my wife's doctor congratulating me on being a father for the first time. And I was very surprised, of course. I said, "How can you call me here on Midway Island?" And the ham operator on Midway told me that it was a foam patch. I went over to determine how is this possible, and one thing led to another. I got bit by the bug. I've been doing it ever since.
Jerry retired in 1974 after 21 years in the Navy, in which time he traveled all over the world and was in Mississippi in 1969 when Hurricane Camille hit.
I had just reported aboard in July of '69, set up my station in my home that I'd rented, and here came Camille all of a sudden. I was in direct communications with the Hurricane Center, with this network. I wasn't in charge of it at the time. I was just another one of the troops. And I actually talked in Camille right over my head. It had, close to 200-mile-an-hour winds. I spent the night in a shelter, got up in the morning and went out to my car, or what was left of my car, took the radios back outside. I had taken them into the shelter with me, reinstalled them in the car, and the next thing I knew, I had a line around the big shelter, close to 3,000 messages ready to go.
Even though most of his work with ham radio involves helping people cope with incredible hardship, on occasion it does offer its more glamorous side.
I've talked with Barry Goldwater a number of times. I've talked with King Hussein. I talked with Arthur Godfrey years ago, before he passed away. He's a ham. Donnie Osmond is a ham. Ronnie Millsap is a ham. You know, there's lots of people like that. So every now and again, yes, there's something fascinating if you can stumble on something like that. The rest of the time, it's just real people. Hams are real people.
Indeed. Well, Jerry says what he would like most right now is a few hours sleep. He's only averaging about 5 hours every night over the last few days while trying to maintain communications in the areas hit by Hurricane Hugo.
Hearing Jerry's voice again is a powerful reminder of where the hurricane watch net began and why it continues today. From those early days with pencil and paper, tracking storms and passing messages one contact at a time, to now, with advances in forecasting, digital tools, and a network of dedicated volunteers, the mission hasn't changed. We're here to serve, to provide reliable communication when it matters most, and more importantly, to help save lives. This first episode of the HWN Report has been about honoring our past, remembering Jerry Murphy's vision and the foundation he built. But as we move forward, we'll also be looking at the challenges of today and opportunities ahead. From preparedness tips to stories from the operators who stand watch, to insights from our partners in weather and emergency management. Thank you for joining us on this very first edition of the HWN Report. Until next time, stay prepared, stay safe, and remember, life has its storms, but it's still meant to be lived to its fullest. I'm Bobby Graves, KB5 HAV.